Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our meta pals out there? In today's episode, we'll be discussing holistic healing, body whispering, and how spirit and science work together to heal with our very special guest, Michelle Aspinwall. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks, John.
Yes, welcome.
We're excited to have you on. Thank you for making time to come
Absolutely.
and have a conversation with us. So, you are a body whisperer. Can you tell us what that means? What exactly is a body whisperer?
Of course. So this is kind of an interesting story. That is a quote that someone or the way someone described me, one of my old clients described me many years ago, and it just sort of stuck. And then other people have kind of said this about me as well. It's the way in which I work. So when I work with women privately and in groups, their bodies and parts of their bodies, their energy, basically, it speaks to me. So when I start to talk to someone, usually there's like an organ or a channel that kind of steps forward. It's as though parts of the body have a voice, if you will. And so then I work with that energy and help them to move, either open a channel or move something within their body. And that's basically what it is.
That's so fascinating. So, when you're working with somebody, their body, whatever may be challenging them, speaks to you.
Yeah,
That
usually.
is so neat. I've never heard, like, usually you hear, someone is in tune with a person, but the fact that you're able to kind of tune into the specific areas that may be blocked, that's really neat. How long have you been body whispering?
So that also is a really kind of interesting question. I've been in the women's health sphere. That's kind of what if I'm just talking to a regular muggle and someone asks me what I do, I'm like, oh, I work in women's health, which is funny because a couple of times my husband's been like, you know what that sounds like? It sounds like you perform abortions. I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea.
I never thought that till you just said that.
I know. I never had thought that, and actually no woman has ever thought that either. But it's partly just kind of it's like a funny thing between us. But so I've been in the women's health sphere for about 8 years. I mean, obviously I've been in the women's health sphere with my own body for 51 years. But the reality is that so over the years, I began with a medicinal food business and then realized I actually didn't really care what people like to eat and don't like to eat. And so that's when I kind of transitioned into talking to those clients. And then I became certified. This was probably like 7 years ago, became certified as a quote unquote coach, like a health coach. And that was like a year-long certification. But then over the course of the past 5 years, I've been working in women's health with hormones. And there's a particular hormone test that I have women purchase. And that test became like my medium, if you will. And so when I first started doing the test, I was reading it and it was all very scientific. And then over time, there were 2 women in particular that I was working with them. And all of a sudden I started the body whisper aspects kind of came, and I didn't really know what was happening at that moment. But, we never know how our gifts are going to open. And so that's kind of how mine sort of opened was I was talking to women and I would get these feelings or I'd get these sensations. And then I started internally asking questions to myself, to this energy that I felt. And then it got to the point where I was doing these hormone tests and the hormone test became a medium. So then I would start to see things that weren't on the test, and between what women would tell me, what the test said, and then basically what I was doing was reading their energy. I put those 3 things together and that's how we move forward. So it's kind of like getting the best of both worlds. You get to have someone who understands the physiology of the female body, the structure and how we work hormonally, which is huge. And then also, like, I've, studied and been so fascinated by Eastern philosophy, like traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. So I kind of combine all these things together, these aspects of the human body, as well as our energy body, our auric body. And then that's kind of how I work. And through these different, mediums, if you will, we can really go deep into the human body and the nerves and the systems and the energy. And between all of those, true healing evolves into a woman who just feels incredible and her life takes off. Because I really, in my experience in women's health, when you actually heal something energetically, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, that's when you start to really expand your auric field, which then, that vibration is then met universally with a similar vibration, right? So it's not just about, I'm a lover of Abraham Hicks, don't get me wrong, but there's an element of just wishing something to happen. You have to actually get a vibrational match. And so I think of the physical body, the human body, as the conduit by which our soul inhabits and how we speak to universal energy. Because we're all just mirroring back to source, some aspect of source. That's how it comes through me.
Holy moly. Like every word you just said speaks to like that energy resonance is just strong. I love everything you just said because I feel like you're saying exactly what we, how do I say this? There is a gap where oftentimes the bridge isn't there. People talk about the spirituality and helping with the energy flow, or they talk about the science and how to heal that once, dis-ease in whatever format represents itself. And the fact that you're like, here's the bridge. I love that so much because that's so powerful. And I love that the hormone tests were the catalyst for you to really step into that phase of your gifts. And they're like your own oracle cards almost.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
That was, you said about, what was that, 5 years ago?
So yeah, 5 years ago is when I really started feeling the energy and working with the testing as well as working with what women were talking to me about. And then about 2.5 years ago, I sort of, if you will, came out of the spiritual closet and basically started admitting that I work with energy. And so that when you come to me and we start, you start talking about your symptoms and we start talking about what's going on in your life and what has brought you to this place. Because really, if you think about it, so I talk about, I work within the 7 chakras, right? We've all heard of chakras. These are the energy plexes that run up and down the spine. Obviously, we have many more chakras than those 7, but those are the main 7. They're the bridge between the human and the divine, right? And so what's interesting is that in working with these chakras, you're also working with the physiology of the body, right? Because in the pineal and the crown chakra, you're working with distinct aspects of the brain that actually both speak to divine energy and also regulate major bodily systems in the body. Like the hypothalamus is like our lighthouse, right? The hypothalamus is the bridge between the nervous system and the endocrine system. And the hypothalamus works very closely with the pineal gland. The pineal gland is basically the third eye chakra. And the pituitary, it also works with pituitary, is a big proponent to the crown chakra. So when we're working with these aspects of the brain that, yes, you could cut them out and you could hold them in your hand, but the vibration that happens from these places, these physical places in our body, is something that not only regulates us as we know us in the 3D, but it also speaks to divine energy, right? So to not put these two things together is almost obtuse if you think about it. It's like, of course they go together. They work in tandem. And so, in working with the chakras and working with these two systems, the nervous and the endocrine system, you're working with the yin and the yang, right? The light and the dark, the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So, that's kind of, I mean, that's basically what it's like the basis of my practice is what I'm working on with any given woman. And so, sorry, just to say this one last point, the why those two systems are so important is because one is very immediate. So the nervous system is like electricity; it happens instantly. So we have messages all the time from the nervous system. Obviously, the nervous system is broken down into other different sub nervous systems, right? Autonomic and such. And the endocrine system is the yin. It takes longer to regulate, and it also takes longer for the body to get those messages for most of them. So you're working with systems that are instantaneous, and you're also working with systems that take a little bit longer, both to receive messages and for those messages to kick in, and then also to bring regulation to them. And those are all felt within the body, whether it's the mind or the physical body. And so, how you experience your life, we're both the receiver and the perceiver. I didn't coin that. One of my old mentors, Joanna Hunter, coined that. We are the receiver and the perceiver. So, we receive things in our life. Then, as humans, we perceive them based on our experiences from the past, right? Or present. And so, this is all a part of healing, right? Because if you believe a certain thing is going to happen over and over, then that is the vibration that goes out, and then that vibration is met, and then you're also creating those messages within the physical body.
So when you came out of the spiritual closet, it sounds like by stepping into your power, that only magnified it even more. And we've talked to a lot of people over the past 4 years, and you're the first person I've heard really, body whispering and bringing stuff like this together. So it sounds like you're really pioneering something. Even if you've had mentors and stuff, there's an approach that you're taking that feels unique to you. So, with that said, how do you navigate being that you're learning and exploring this while still applying it to clients and people that you assist? Like, is it all just new? And how do you keep up with it, I guess, is the best way for me to say it.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how to answer that. I mean, part of me is so I had my own health journey. So, how I keep up with it is I am managing my own human experience, my own human development, my own receiving and perceiving, right? So, part of me is learning on the fly. So, people ask me all the time, what are your credentials? I'm like, I'm living. That's my credential. I'm a living, breathing credential of all of the things that I know and believe. And I think we put a lot of stock into medical doctors, specialists, quote unquote energy healers who are trained in this modality or that modality. And it's kind of like, I don't have any of that to stand on. What I have is my experience with the human body, my experience with the medical system, and my experience with what channels through me. So some people can see things, some people can hear things. I know that I'm guided. I know 100% I'm guided. I don't speak to those guides in a conversational, I speak, they answer. But over time, things have happened that are beyond synchronistic. I mean, they're synchronistic to, a naysayer, but to someone who's living the experience, and I'm sure you've heard this from other spiritual or, intuitive psychic people. It's like, I can't explain why I know it. I just know it to be true because it feels, number one, it comes into me very differently than when I think thoughts in my mind. When I think thoughts in my mind, there's a very linear process. This thought leads to the next thought, leads to the next thought. When I am channeling for someone or when something is coming through me, which is how I receive divine knowledge and information or guidance, if you will, it drops in. There's no thinking before, and there's honestly not a lot of thinking after. And that's how I know when I'm in my human form, living and thinking something through my mind versus something is coming through me for someone else. I'll give you an example. I've never in my life called myself a medium. I don't generally get information from people, souls and energy that's past that I can identify as past, right? Like my dead grandmothers, who I absolutely love and admire and would give anything to be able to converse with them. Now they've both passed. I don't hear guidance from them in that form, but I know that when I have so sorry, I was giving you an example. Okay, sorry. Let's just start that.
No,
one
you're
again.
good. You're good. You're good.
Okay.
I was
I've
following your thought process.
You were? Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not sure if like because I some of these things I never talk about, but I feel like this is like I can really go out there on this one because
Please
you guys it's called Haunted. And so here we are. I'm not going to get the usual like, Sally Bible people.
No, we're all about the woo woo and everything else. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
as far
Okay,
out as
great.
you want to go. Yeah, we love it.
Cool.
We
All
eat
right,
it up.
cool.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm on the
And
train with you, so follow whatever tracks
you're on the
you
train.
need to go.
Okay. So I've never called myself or advertised myself as a medium because I don't see myself as that's not how information comes through me. I will say this though, I've worked with women where I'm working with an autoimmune disease or something very real, like something very diagnosed from a medical perspective. And then all of a sudden, a client's like dead, deceased child or one of their animals is speaking to me. And then I'm like asking them questions because a lot of times something will come through me. So I think in terms of spirituality, I think that I'm sure that I'm wrong about this to some extent, but I think for me, the way it's happened is that I have one thing, I have the knowing, right? I don't see energy per se yet. I see glimpses of it and I don't hear things fully yet. Like these two things are coming into my awareness. I don't have access to them all the time. It's as though I have access to them when I need them, but not other times. Whereas my knowing, I have access to my knowing all the time. Like I could talk to both of you guys about what's going on in your body if you want to. I mean, I don't want to do that on here, but we could do that. But I can't talk to your dead grandmothers because they're not coming forth, if that makes sense. Like, I don't even know if they're dead. I'm just saying, like, I can't do that right now. So it's interesting because I think the question you're asking me is.
Yeah, my question was all over the place. I apologize for that.
No. You were like, how do I know? Or how do I, and I feel like my knowing is the first thing to open. And I think that there's others opening. They just haven't fully opened yet. And I want to say that in case there's people out there who they get glimpses of something, trust what's being shown to you because it's never just your imagination, right? Like I say when I guide women on a meditation and I say like, do you feel this sensation in your belly? They're like, yeah, I feel that sensation because I already know what's talking. Like I know what's talking to them. So I'm guiding them through and they're like, how do I know that's not my imagination? I'm like, well, if I feel it and you feel it, then clearly it's not your imagination. Now, is it? Because I don't see myself as that powerful. But I do think that we have guidance and information. And if we open our minds, and when I say open our minds, I don't necessarily mean be open, although that's important too. I literally mean just like stop thinking. Like my most precious, my most powerful channeling comes through when I just relax and I just open the channels. Like I call it my inner core channel. And this is a channel that runs through all 7 chakras, including my higher heart. And I think it's connected to my higher self, although I'm not certain of that. But I know it covers all 7 major chakras. And I would imagine it runs into the Earth Star chakra as well, mine, because it is connected to the matrix that runs under the ground, that we all have access to that energy, that universal mother energy, the great heart of the mother, right? Mother Gaia. So I do believe that if we tap into that inner core channel and we keep it open, which is like, when you blow through a straw and you're like blowing like all the bits of whatever smoothie you're drinking, like it's like just blowing out those bits and just like allowing yourself to be open. Like that's how it feels to me, is when my inner core channel is open, because I've meditated that day and I've cleared everything and I've closed my eyes and I've like eliminated the noise, then I can open things up, and that's when the guidance comes.
Yeah, I know you were speaking to, how people ask you, well, how did, what's your certification? How is that even, possible? And the thing that when there is something new to someone or just in the field in general is that every modality started somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you're letting your intuition guide you and you're listening to that inner core truth, I think is just going to take you exactly where you need to go. And I know exactly what you mean when you say how there's a difference between your linear thinking and just knowing, because for me, I mostly just feel
Mm-hmm.
energies, feel emotions. Well, motion is energy. Um, I mostly just feel, which I'm okay with. I've always said on this podcast, jokingly, but mostly not joking, I don't want to be a seer. I don't want to see things, because sometimes what I feel is enough. I'm like, oh man, if I could see that what I felt, that's probably not fun. So I get that idea, because for me, there were quite a few years where I was actively teaching or guiding yoga practices. And towards like the middle of that, time period in my life where I was doing it almost daily, it would get to the point where I would, in the practice, stuff would come out of my mouth. And it was just, I don't know why I'm saying what I'm saying it, but because I'm in that space that I feel,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was that aligned. You feel like I'm so aligned. I'm connected with what's through me, outside of me, that things would come out of my mouth. And I trusted that. I leaned into
Mm-hmm.
that, but I would have people ask me, "How did you know? How
Mm-hmm.
did you know I needed to hear that?" And I'm like, "I didn't." But I'm glad that was for you. Like, I don't know why I said it, but I trusted that. Like it just it popped into me, and I knew this is what I needed to say in that moment. And it was always, no matter how often it happened, it was always still kind of a shock for me when people would say, "How did you know?" I'm like, I don't know. I just trust that that's what I was supposed to say. So I said it in that moment. And it's a knowing. And I think it's amazing that you've got that all the time. For me, that was just in those moments, right? Versus something I could tap into all the time. And I know you mentioned, sorry, I'm kind of going on the track of what you were speaking about, but I know you mentioned that you mostly know, but sometimes you have other glimpses of gifts. And for me, I'm a big proponent of our gifts are there as we need them, how we need them. So it's great that you've got, this array of them, and some are, all the time, and some are sometimes, because it sounds like you are someone who is very connected to their intuition. And I want to be like you.
Well, something to go back to something that you said earlier about when you were in practice with yoga, the way I see it, and I spoke about this at the very beginning, and I usually gloss over this just because I find it to be slightly more, it's not necessarily understood this way. So what I'm imagining that you were just talking about in terms of like when you're in the room with a bunch of people and I think, and this is how I see it when I see women's expansion. So when I work with women on a physical level, I can feel their physical body. I can hear in terms of like what their body's asking. So that's the whispers, right? But then the most incredible thing happens as they start to shift their reality, as they start to begin to heal the internal body. The external world mirrors that vibration, and in the form of really beautiful things happening, and sometimes some painful things happening, which in the moment feels painful. But when you are in it for the long game and you're looking back, right? Hindsight is always 2020. You realize that was, someone fell, like not physically fell, but like someone in your life who was very important to you, all of a sudden, you don't see eye to eye anymore, and that friendship sort of melts away or dissipates, or you grow estranged, right? And in the moment that feels very painful, but then over time you realize, like, we can't hold on to all the people that we accumulate in our lives, and that people come in and out as part our vibration and also our auric field, right? So, and to come back to what you were saying, I think what was happening is your auric field was interacting with other people's auric field, and that brought you, like, that's how you were working. You were talking about knowing, like, my auric field interacts with other people's, and then that's part of where some of that information comes. And what's really beautiful about that is it's always through the heart, right? The auric field expands and contracts through the heart, which means the bigger our auric field, the more connected we are to more people. The smaller our energy, the less connected we are, the more we are concentrated on ourselves, our immediate world, and the intimate relationships within it. But as a woman heals her body, her auric field grows, because the experience of being able to give and receive gets bigger. And that happens through the auric field. And that's the energy of the upper triangle and the lower triangle coming together and expanding. And what I've noticed, and what's so powerful about this kind of work, is that when we start to heal the physical body, and then our outside world starts to mirror our inside world, we can be healers as a vibrational frequency just by walking past someone else, and who we are and the energy that's emanating, the vibration that's emanating from us, puts an idea in their head that sends them to the next thing that they need to do, just because they walked past us, or just because they were in our yoga class, or just because we said the right thing with the right words at the right frequency, because that's what our words are, right? If we think about the throat chakra, it's actually a combination of the heart. So it's very similar to the solar plexus. The solar plexus takes in raw material and changes it into usable calories for the body. There's not a single thing that we put in us except water, but even that is changed because it has to be structured before it gets to the cell. There's nothing that goes in us that doesn't have to change form before the human body can use it. The same is true for words. We don't just we don't just say all the things that we think, because then we would have no filter. We have to bring the ideas in, and then we make them our own, and our throat chakra transforms them. And this is part of the healing that's meant to be done with women right now, is that most women don't recognize that how they feel and how they think are very different than what they're saying. And so getting women out of victim, getting women to feel more empowered in their bodies, getting women off the train of, like, it's the outline of your body and this, 12 inches of skin that's so important in this life. It's like, it couldn't be less important if we're being really honest. It's like actually your vibration and frequency, which is really about doing the inner work. And so I wanted to just say that about what you said when you were teaching yoga. It was probably a very, very powerful and very healing experience for a lot of people, even though it wasn't necessarily registering in your conscious mind at the moment. You were definitely bending energy and working with people's auric fields in that moment.
Yeah, definitely for me, I felt, we talk about it, and I'm sure you've heard it in the yogic practice, how we are the student and the teacher. And for
Always.
me, like, even guiding all of those classes, every class I still felt like I was equally learning. I was
Yeah.
equally growing. I was equally healing. And so I loved it. I felt like, oh well, I'm helping you, but I'm also kind of self-serving here. I'm I'm
Yeah.
also learning and healing and growing. And something you said that really sticks out to me is, especially when it comes to women, is our throat chakra gets so blocked. It gets so damaged, for lack of a better word, or hindered maybe, because I feel like a lot of cultural conditioning and societal conditioning of what we're allowed to say and how we're allowed to say it, and expression in general, and it really does, I think, cascade down. That ends up affecting, because it is a line, it ends up affecting everything else because of the frustration and the anger and that victim, right? The victim hood that we learn because of that. So for me in my journey, it's been learning how to realign and express through the throat chakra, and in a way that is not the opposite. So, not damaging, not harming, not because I feel like oftentimes when we do learn through something or we're trying to undo something, we go the other extreme. So it's just like, okay, versus suppressing all of my thoughts and words, everything, stuff that I probably should be expressing, now it's everything, right? Unfiltered. Now it's carrying anger and hurt and emotion and all of those things that I think are empowerment, but they're not. And so learning to find that balance and bringing it back to neutral so that it's expression and expressing those emotions and those thoughts and feelings while still trying not to be harming. Does that make sense?
It does. It's lots of people talk about harming the throat chakra and blocked throat chakras. And I see it a little bit differently than that. The way I understand and the way that I work through the different chakras is, if you think about a chakra, right? A chakra is a plexus of nerves. It's a grouping of organs, and then it's also energy, right? So when we put those three things together, right? Our physical, our energetic, and our emotional, there's a spiritual component as well, but the spiritual component comes after those three. So we're working in those three at any given moment. And if you think about the physical body connected to the energy body, so all seven chakras have an endocrine component to them. And obviously the throat chakra has the thyroid, the heart has the thymus, the solar plexus has the pancreas, the sacral has the ovaries, and the root has the adrenals. So if we're working in the lower triangle and really kind of understanding every single endocrine gland in the body, it begins with something that's happening in the brain. And then whether it goes the nervous system side, which is electrical current very quickly, or endocrine system side, which is messages that go through the blood that then reach various organs and glands and then either turn them on or turn them off or regulate some kind of regulation. So when we were talking about the solar plexus and how it's a transformational organ, because we have organs that hold things, we have organs that excrete things, and then we have organs that do both, that both create and secrete. And so the thyroid is very interesting because, or the throat chakra is interesting because it has the thyroid. The thyroid is one of the major regulators in the human body, both men and women, but especially women. And so, but the thyroid itself gets a lot of its information from the pituitary, which is upstream, right? And so when we perceive danger or we perceive threat or we perceive change, that has to go through the thyroid, and the thyroid regulates everything. It regulates our heartbeat, it regulates our metabolism, it regulates our body temperature. It regulates so many things that of course it's in the throat, because when we need to ask for help or when we need to ask for what we need, it's the throat chakra that provides that transformation of, I'm thinking a thought, which creates a feeling or an emotion. And then we take those two things and we create a vibration of sound or words that then is us asking for what we need. And I don't think of the throat chakra as getting blocked. I think of women as not being able to work with not being able to understand or be discerning with what they think and how they feel. These two things are very, very important. We have to discern between what is ours and what is real and what is someone else's and what is not true, because we take on a lot of beliefs that are actually not true. And then we perceive that, and our perception is what creates a belief. And beliefs are held in the body, and they create sensations. They create emotions, or they create tightness, or they create a speeding up of the breath or a holding of the breath. And this changes how our biological body functions. So when I think about the throat chakra, I encourage people to really see the throat chakra as a transformational chakra, taking and recognizing that your power comes with being able to take what you think, what you feel, and what you need and transform it into a vibration that essentially represents you from who you are and what you need or what you desire even better right now, right? So I mean, it sounds simple, but when you actually get into it, it's quite complex. It's part of why talk therapy by itself doesn't entirely work. We have to bring the body into safety, and sometimes safety is a physical safety, and sometimes meaning you got to get out of that crappy relationship that isn't helping you. But other times that physical safety is you have to have magnesium and sodium and calcium in order for your body to not feel depleted of minerals that are literally 300 cofactors to other things in the body. So that safety can be an external safety or an internal safety.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the way you framed the throat chakra being transformative, and it is empowering to think that it's perception versus reality. So
Mm-hmm.
being conditioned to believe
Mm-hmm.
that you are not allowed to speak this or feel that or express this, and being the agent of that your own change,
Mm-hmm.
empowering that, hey, you can discern that you actually are able to speak that and that your reality is yours to own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty powerful. I do like that.
I taught kids in college. So before I was in women's health, I was a set and costume designer. It sounds like a big major shift, but it's actually quite similar, if you will. But I remember in a college, I taught undergraduate and design, but in this one class, it was mostly freshmen and sophomore, and this one kid who was quite talented. I remember him saying to me, "Well, I'm not an artist. I just hang lights." And he was a lighting designer. And he said, "I'm not an artist, I'm a lighting designer." And I said, "Well, what's the difference? Like, talk to me about the difference." And he was talking to me about the difference. He said, "Well, my family were not artists. Like, we've all heard some version of the story. Like, I'm not an artist, I can't draw." And I said, "Well, maybe you think you can't pick up a pencil and draw, but I guarantee you that if I had you draw something and you couldn't look at what you were drawing and you just drew it and you just allowed yourself to release that belief that you can't draw, I'm certain you could draw something, because I've seen your shows and I've seen you light a moment, which is most definitely painting with light and color." And so I said, "You might think you can't draw, but I think you actually just don't realize what you can do, because someone down the line, whether it was your mom or your bullshit high school art teacher who's like pissed off that they're teaching high school art and not an artist in their whatever, right? Whatever the story is. And I think you're just holding on to this story. Well, what if you let go of the story and you just allowed yourself to draw something?" Because art is incredibly subjective. Like, there were people who would look at Mapplethorpe's, right? We all remember Mapplethorpe. There were people who would look at his photography and call it pornography. And then there were people who would look at his photography and see themselves in it because they've never been able to express being a homosexual male and loving their physical existence. Who's right? They're both right. Some people hate it, some people love it. We're allowed to love and hate, right? We're allowed to resonate with something, and we're allowed to not resonate with something. And I think I showed that kid in the moment, like, let go of this belief and then watch what happens to your perceptions. You're going to see the world in a different way. And he did. And he ended up going to graduate school, and he's a famous lighting designer now. And I'm not, by no means am I taking credit for that. But what I am taking credit for is the fact that we've created these beliefs, and they might be our beliefs. He may have drawn something and thought it was terrible, but my guess is someone down the line said, "Well, we're not artists in our family." And then as a child, you don't have, your prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet, so you take on your parents' beliefs without even realizing it. And then all of a sudden, you're a lighting designer and you're painting with light and color. And there's a lot of people who can't do that. You're most definitely an artist, right?
Yeah, those self-limiting beliefs. Sometimes I think also is just this idea that we train ourselves to think in such black and white terms. So this idea, well, I can't fly, I'm not a bird. And it's like, well, maybe you can't fly like a bird,
Mm-hmm.
but I guarantee you, if you have the will, like the Wright brothers did, you will figure out a way to fly. And
Mm-hmm.
same with him. Maybe he isn't the strongest skill set with a pencil or charcoal or paintbrush or whatever, but he's artistic with light. And so
Yeah.
it's just, if there is a passion within you that you truly feel, I need to move, I need to express myself. Maybe I'm not a ballerina, but I will find a way to move my body that feels authentic and true to me, that is
Mm-hmm.
just as expressive and just as energetic. And yeah, I'm with you. I love that. That's such a great story.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I just want to say that I kind of needed to hear that anyway. And Ashley, I've been talking about writing and how I used to do it as a teenager all the time. And lately I just feel stuck and like I can't do it anymore. And like stuff that I wrote back then wasn't good enough. But I kind of needed to hear that and get my butt moving again on the writing. So that was just like perfect timing with everything there.
Okay, John, let me ask you this.
Yes.
What do you love writing about? Is there a topic you love writing about, or is there something you're trying to write and you can't get through it?
I don't know. Like I used to write just short stories, or I would have weird dreams and just turn those into stories. Some of my nightmares, like Stephen King and everybody, turn that into a story and stuff. And there has been a script that I've been kind of working on very, very off and on lately about in the horror genre, and I just haven't gotten very far. Like I had so many ideas for it, and I just kind of just like, nope, those aren't good. It just stopped. So
What if you let yourself get the ideas out without having any kind of belief of they're good or they're bad? Because I could show you on my phone. I have sentences, parts of sentences, groups of things, something I see that brings a thought about. And I have a whole thing on my phone in my notes section of like things I want to talk about in the future. And so, what if you just, every time you had an idea, like you got a big sticky pad or something like that, and you just allow those ideas to be something that you come back to later when
right,
you feel inspired instead of when you feel like you have to complete something. And what if you take time out of the equation? Like what happens when you, because this is an interesting thing. So, this is something I want to talk about. So, people think healing takes time. And I can tell you right now that healing can happen in an instant. Any single person on this planet can hear something that activates in them a shift in perspective, which changes the way their DNA expresses. Now, does that mean that we can take someone who's been in a wheelchair for 20 years and have them walk in an instant? No, I'm not Jerry Falwell, but I will say this, that I can work with someone and in 1 hour, I can see the gaps and I can say to them, this is what's happening. This is what you believe, I think. Tell me if this is right or wrong. And then I want you to change that system. So right now, you're not getting past the writing because somewhere along the way, you've been cataloging things and saying, well, this isn't good enough. I can't go further with this. I want you to stretch yourself by getting all the ideas out so that you can look at the ideas and be like, this is the one I want to work on. Not having them up here where they're just percolating, like literally get them out. You can do it by voice message, you can do it by writing them down, you can do it in your notes folder. Find a way that makes it come out easy and then choose the one you want to work on. Because right now you're judging it, you're working at the speed of thought, and that's never a very quantum speed. The quantum speed is the desire. So I want you to stop judging things and I want you to work from desire. And the only way to do that is to get them out.
yeah, that makes complete sense. And it's funny that you bring up the notepad stuff too, because I used to write poetry, again in high school and stuff, and I would write different things on different pieces of paper for different stuff and try to combine them all into different things. And it worked sometimes. So, it was pretty good.
Before you had a process, you were very open. And the thing that happens to people with time, as we gather time, we develop these modes that it should be like this and it should happen like this and I should have already accomplished this. If you let go of that and go back to the childlike way, which is we all need to be more childlike, right? And just allow yourself to open, that poetry is very important. The horror is important too, but the poetry is going to take you somewhere.
Very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I just read that in your energy, by the way. So that's a little free gift.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I love that there are so many different avenues out there for people to receive messages, but I love that you are presenting. I myself am guilty of forgetting is that it's not just receiving and perceiving and giving, like it all goes together. And because I get so stuck on like giving, then I have the reverse reaction and I'm like, I need to isolate and, decompress and just be myself because I've given so much, I've depleted myself. So remembering that there are the yin and the yang, there are the divine and the masculine, and everything in between is a message that I think I apparently need to hear a lot because I forget way too many times. Now, can you tell me what exactly is the dome? I saw it on your website and I wasn't quite sure what the dome is.
I love the dome. Can I tell you? So let's talk about
Love
the
to hear.
dome. So as a woman, I want to paint the picture for you. So I want you to imagine that you're in this protective geothermal, almost like a greenhouse, right? But it's in the shape of a dome instead of in the shape of angles. And I want you to imagine that there's a hanging chair, right? So it has a little bit of give to it. And it's hanging from a tree that's growing within this geothermal dome. And the temperature is perfect. And the humidity level is perfect. And there's so much beautiful oxygen because there's all of these gorgeous plants. And there's a slight hint of jasmine or a slight hint of rose. And then you have something herbal. So it's all around you. You're surrounded by this ecosystem within an ecosystem because you are connected to all these things and all of these things are fueling you. And you have a complete calm within you. And you're sitting in this chair that's gently rocking. And you have light and you have everything that you need, and you close your eyes and you learn to work with your body from within. That is the dome. The dome is a collective of women. So it's a membership where we've come together as a collective of women. It's for empaths and healers and women who are and understand. You don't have to have already figured it out, but you have to have an inkling that the answers are within, because this is the place where the answers are. So all of my work up till this point is in the dome. So there are courses, there are lots and lots of guided meditations, there are trainings, there are master classes. Some of them are long, like 21 days of videos and things, and some are very short. Some are 60 minutes, 30 minutes with a PDF or a meditation. This is the dome. And then with the dome, there's a one-on-one component. So you get an hour together with me once a month. And then we have a group call once a month. So that's the dome. And it's a beautiful collective of women. Sorry, John, it's only for women at this point. But it's really where the magic begins to happen, because you have a group component, you have a private component with me. And of course, as a sovereign being, because that's how we heal as sovereign beings, we take radical responsibility for ourselves and we take action and we rest when we need to rest and we accomplish when we need to accomplish. And so that is the dome.
I'm still caught up on the description. I'm like in there swinging in my chair, swaying. That's so beautiful. And John knows I have a hard time visualizing, but
Yeah,
um,
but that was great. Like, oh yeah.
we recently talked to a guest who mentioned that there are five faculties, the higher faculties, and one of them is imagination, and
Mm,
that it's locked in a prison that we have to work through releasing those because we're
yes.
hung up on our internal monologue. And so for me, I'm like, oh, I wonder if my imagination is held extra, like it's in the what's that one? Yeah, the isolation that they put prisoners in, like it's its own little
Oh,
prison.
solitary,
Yeah,
solitary.
solitary
Yeah,
confinement. So I need to reopen it. But I've been working on that, on having
good.
less internal pressure so my imagination can go. So you guided me through that, and I visualized and I smelled. So I'm on my way.
Beautiful.
I do love that you work with, it sounds like, you're open to different demographics, but you tend to have an emphasis with women over 40. Is that correct?
Yes, because generally women under 40 are living a very different existence than women over 40. I mean, if you're over 40, you've probably either had your children or you're birthing them as we speak because your fertility does not last forever. And if you're not quite 40, you're still very young. You're in your young phase. You're walking around, you're looking hot, you're trying to find your partner, you're going dancing, you're experiencing all of the beauties and all the fun things in life. It's not to say I have two clients right now who are in their late 20s. And so I work with women of all ages. But the sweet spot is when I can get someone who's, close to 40 or right at 40, because that decade between 40 and 50 is a really pivotal time in women's health. And it's a ceremony that needs to be celebrated, that needs to be experienced, and it needs to be realized. And that's something, I mean, yes, there's perimenopause and there's menopause and there's all the dogma and stereotypes that come along with that. But as a 51-year-old woman at this moment in time, what I've experienced over the past 10 years has been nothing short of a miracle. And who I was 10 years ago and who I am now is a beautiful evolution that happened because we have to. It happens quite quickly. We go from being a young woman who looks, I mean, at 41, I looked early 30s. And, in these 10 years, my body has changed. The way that I perceive myself, the world, I can read energy. Like there's all these things that have happened in these 10 years. And I truly believe in ceremony, and I believe in being grounding ourselves deeper into the heartbeat of the Great Mother and connecting in with that matrix that's connects all living beings, all living things, all living aspects in the natural world. And I use botanicals. So I'm not, when I say ceremony, I don't mean psychedelic ceremony. I mean like truly using things that don't alter the consciousness and coming into ceremony with them. So that's part of other work that I do as well on retreat, is bringing women into ceremony, whether they're coming into their these beautiful rich years or they're kind of completing their menopausal journey and really finding ceremony with that. There's a lot of death that happens over these 10 years, so it's a pivotal time. It's a portal that every woman, if she's lucky, gets to walk through.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned the aspect between, we'll say 40 and up, because I feel like oftentimes, you know, people think once you've hit 40, 45, like, okay, I'm at where I'm at. My life can't change. It's too late. And it's like, no, it's not. I mean, look at you. 5 years ago, you came into your gifts. That would have made you
Yeah,
what, 45, 46, and
yeah.
you leaned into your intuition. And just within that 5 years, look where you're at now.
Hmm.
And
Totally.
I that's a lesson I tapped into even within my own journey, is like who I was even 2 years ago is just completely different than who I am today. And so I have tried to retrain myself to think, holy moly, versus, okay, what is another 2 years going to be like? I'm excited to see where I'm going to go in 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from, because my journey is still going. And for some people, maybe it's just getting started on a different path that they never knew possible. So I love that you work, especially with the 40 plus group, because I do feel like that is a conditioning where a lot of people think once they've hit mid 40s and on, like, well, I'm at where I'm at. And it's like, no, you have so much still left in your journey and possibilities to explore. And so I love that.
Thank you. I love it
Yeah,
too.
that's
It's a
exciting.
beautiful, it's a truly beautiful time of life too. You know, if you've had children, they're generally older, going off to college. Some people's marriages are dissolving. Some people's marriages are getting even more incredible. It just sort of depends on the person. But it is a time of life when we're not at the mercy of our hormones, because there's a cost to hormones. I mean, estrogen keeps us really connected to our physical aspect, you know, how we look. It keeps us really connected to birthing babies, to the cyclical nature of women, which is that 28-day cycle. It keeps us very primed and pumped into procreation. That's why women are who they are, whether you choose to or not. I mean, there's no pressure, obviously, but it really does keep us conditioned to want and think and behave in a certain way. And when the estrogen starts to lower and the ovaries begin to quiet, you start to really see who you are without the hormones, without the ups and downs of the hormones, without the changing of the hormones. When they start to really even out, you really come into what you truly believe and what you deem important in your own life, not necessarily the beliefs that have been put there for you. It's powerful, powerful time of life.
And you still integrate in the science of it. So, like you were saying, maybe you need magnesium, maybe you need other things that are not just what, we've gone to refer to as woo woo. It all goes
Mm-hmm.
hand in hand. So, whereas you might need yoga alignment, you might need talk therapy, but you also might need vitamins. Like
Yeah.
that might be a thing. Because I know, you know, especially right now, we have a lot of emphasis on mental health and sadness, depression, and stuff like that. And that's very important. But I myself am guilty of this. Like if I start to feel low, I'm like, oh no, is something wrong with me? And then I have to pause and say, wait a minute, let's check off a few things. Did I drink enough water today?
Mm-hmm.
Am I hungry? Because those also will cause those neurons to fire off and transform into energy signals that may look or feel like depression or sadness. And not to discredit any of that, but to be inclusive, that it could be an array of things and not just one thing. So I love that you look at all of those avenues and
All of it.
possibilities.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
definitely.
include it all. It's inclusive.
Very.
There you go. That's the word I was looking for. I'm so into hearing what you have to say that I find myself just constantly saying, I love that. I don't know how well my hosting duties are today, but it's everything you're saying just resonates for me on such an energetic level. And you take 38-year-olds, right?
Most definitely.
That's really cool. So you did mention retreats, and I saw that on your website. How do the retreats work?
The retreats are really fun. So I haven't run a group retreat. I prefer to work in the private realm, although I'm not opposed to running a group retreat at some point. But the retreats are a weekend together. So it's a private one-on-one experience together. And as I said earlier, like many women really say to me, like working with you for an hour is like doing months of work in an hour. And so a retreat is one-on-one time where I read your energy. I do a ton of channeling. I really talk to your body. I really help you ground even deeper into the heartbeat, as I like to call it. There's almost always for women one botanical that speaks to me that we use. And so that becomes, we choose that botanical and that becomes the theme, if you will, for the weekend. And so we use it in lots of different ways because, of course, ceremony is just that. We use it, we can use it, we can smoke it, we can drink it, we can eat it, you can bathe in it. we can commune with it. So we incorporate it in all different ways, for depending on the person and depending on what the body is asking for. But I'll give you an example. Like, I've done chrysanthemum, I've done blue lotus, I've done rose. Like, there's different ones, and every botanical, every plant has an energy to it, and how we use it is in accordance with how that person's body is asking for it, or needing it. Like, rose has a very beautiful energy to open the heart. So someone who's dealing with deep grief or depression, opening the heart is really important. So we use the rose as not only the scent of the rose, but we can eat the rose petals in really beautiful ways. Like, there's a gorgeous, matcha type, latte, not matcha, latte type drink that I make, where we infuse the rose into that. So there's so many different ways to use botanicals. And so that's basically the retreat is in ceremony. And then, so, I haven't done this yet, but for some women, really coming into celebration mode on their menopausal party. So the day of menopause is one day. It's when a woman hasn't had a cycle for 12 months, consecutive 12 months. And that day, that 12-month day, that is your menopausal party. That's the portal that you transition through. So in 2024, I'm going to start offering these menopausal party retreats, if you will, where we're really going to celebrate. So we're going to acknowledge everything that you've experienced. We're going to, release a lot of things. Then we're going to move into and step into the future, right? Step into what this next act of life is. And of course, obviously, I have to bring the botanicals because it's such a beautiful experience. So that's the retreats.
You do incorporate nutrition into this as well, because you started, right? That's a
I started
medical,
there. Yeah.
yeah, medical food, and now you've got this literally whole body, internal, external practice. So with that, how do you incorporate the food? Is it more of like the Ayurvedic, or how does that look?
So I don't really work within any one modality. As I said earlier, like, they all sort of come together. And so the way that I think about food is, I think about a person's constitution. So everyone has a unique blueprint to their human, and it takes into account a lot of different things. So when I'm working with someone and we're talking about their constitution, we're looking at how old they are. So, a person who is 17 needs a very different nutritional profile than a woman who's, bearing children at, say, 30, 35, versus a woman who's coming into perimenopause or menopause at 50 or 55. Like, those nutritional needs are they couldn't be more different. And so stage of life is really important. How you feel, so various symptoms or sensations in the body. Then I look at blood work. I look at someone's blood type and also their blood work, because I want to see not only enzymatically, like, genetically, where do you come from, but also how well do you metabolize proteins and carbohydrates and fiber and fats, because that's really important too. And then I look at, in terms of constitution, I kind of, it's very similar to Ayurveda, but I don't only work in the three doshas. Like, I incorporate other mental and emotional aspects. And so we look at that as well. And then I put all of that together, and I sort of help a woman see, or a man, because I work with both. The dome is only for women, but privately I'll work with men. Men are very easy to work with because their hormones don't change as much, and they're cyclical over 24 hours, as we are cyclical, unlike us, and we're cyclical over 28 days. So we work within the moon cycle, and men work within the sun cycle, the sun and the moon cycle. So more the sun, but so I call it constitution, because it creates a very specific blueprint that helps someone understand, should you be eating more animal protein or more plant protein? Should you be having a higher fat diet or a lower fat diet? Things like that.
It does, it's fascinating, and I think it's really just fantastic that you allow your intuition to include the different modalities as they are needed, right? It's
Mhm.
not so
Yeah.
much you directly looking to each one as this mathematical equation, more so it's just this is what is intuitively being presented to treat a whole person. And that's not that I want to place a judgment call on it, but I feel like that's probably the most effective method, because oftentimes when we get hung up on one thing, it is easy to overlook other aspects that are contributing to the whole. We are not just one layer, there are many layers to us. So the fact that you are allowing your intuition to guide that for treatment and helping people empower themselves to do the same, I think is really, it's fantastic. And in this short segment, we have talked about so much, and so much has been said, that I imagine that there are going to be quite a few people that are interested in learning more about you. Where can they find more information, and are you open to being contacted?
Oh, of course, always open. So, if you're wanting to read more about what I offer, like who I am, how I think, and what I offer, that would be my website. So, that's my name, michelleaspinwall.com. And you can read about the dome and retreats and things like that, single sessions. If you're wanting to kind of get in the energy and sort of listen to how I talk and be more connected to like how I think over time, I have a couple of different places. So I have a Facebook group called the Body Whisperer Lounge. That's on Facebook. And then my personal profile on Facebook, Michelle Aspinwall. And then I go live on TikTok through Body Whisperer. So I made a few posts on TikTok. I'm not a huge TikTok person, but I prefer to go live. Like I love to just rock up to the live, talk about a topic for 30 minutes. So you can find me on TikTok as well. And I'm on Instagram, but Instagram is Michelle P, because my middle name is P, middle initials P, Aspinwall. So those are the three places, I would say, four places that people can find me.
With your Facebook group, is that for people that are members of the Dome only, or can anyone be a part of the group?
The lounge is free and it's open to anyone, any woman. The dome obviously is paid, so that's $199 a month, and that's different. So that's a different segment altogether. But anyone can be part of the lounge. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share before we wrap up this amazing session?
I think the one thing that I always love to share with women and men as well is to truly allow yourself to believe that your body is brilliant. I mean, I think that our bodies are this amazing mechanism that is incredibly mysterious and incredibly sophisticated and also incredibly simple. So to believe it's brilliant and at the same time to believe that you can inhabit it and love it and understand it and use it to your greatest ability, like really those two things, so it doesn't ever become this mysterious thing that you can't ever grasp, and it's also just not this silly thing that you have to kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis, but like, worship it and at the same time work with it every day. And then I truly think that it's a brilliant, I mean, I'm amazed every day at how brilliant the human body is. So that's what love to end with.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been a really phenomenal conversation, and I appreciate you coming on to talk about all of these topics. I feel like I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night with an aha moment, because that's what my brain does. It processes everything and while I'm asleep, and then I wake up at 3 a.m. saying, "Oh." So so thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you making time to come and talk to us about this.
Thank you both. I really enjoyed it.
All right, John Thomas.
All right. Again, thank you, Michelle. I learned stuff that I didn't think that I was going to learn today, and so that's a good thing. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your hosts. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And if you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss amazing guests like Michelle.
Until next time. Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.